The topic is practical and soft skills. This is a topic that could go on for a very long time. There's a huge, exhaustive list of soft skills, but I wanted to just mention a couple of them and how it kind of, interacts with all of the content that you receive today. So just to kind of define what is soft skills, right? You have soft skills and you have hard skills. So soft skills are the traits and interpersonal skills that basically characterize a person's ability to effectively communicate and talk with others, right? Relay on that information. Then you have hard skills. So hard skills, the reason why they have that differentiated, the hard skills is basically the knowledge and the actual skills that you may have. So you have knowledge of the deen, you have knowledge of the Quran, you maybe went to school and you have a degree, you have all this knowledge. It's kind of the skills, the things that you're able to kind of do with your hands, like hard skills. Soft skills is how do you communicate those skills? How do you interact with other human beings, right? That communication, that interaction is a huge, huge component of getting your message across. Because you'll hear this term a lot, right? It's not necessarily only about what you say, but it's also about how you say it. How do you make the other person receptive to it? How do you make the other person engaged in what you're talking about as well? So again, there's a huge list, and this is, especially soft skills in general, is not something that you sit in a lecture and you listen and you learn like that. No, it's something that is developed over time through practice. But this is really to just make you aware of it. This is to make you aware and to start looking at yourself and how you present yourself and how you communicate with others. You'll find many lists and pictographs out there talking about different soft skills. I chose this one. I wanted to just kind of point out and talk about a few and how it relates to teaching new Muslims and giving dawah. I'm going to start with the bottom left there, confidence, right? So number one thing, when they talk about confidence, they're talking about personal confidence. But for us, we're talking about the deen. The confidence should come from the fact that you are on haqq, that you know you are on the truth, that you have the truth, right? When you are giving da'wah especially, you remind yourself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Inna deena inda Allahi al-Islam, that the only religion in the sight of Allah is al-Islam. And going back and connecting it with Hamza, the map that he showed that talked about from the beginning of the creation of mankind until the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, until now, that you had the same haqq, which was always Islam, the aqidah, the creed, the belief system around Islam, which is focused on that tawheed, right? So knowing that, if you're talking with a Christian and they're trying to argue with you, coming from that place of confidence that I know I have the haqq, but as you are a da'i, and important our soft skills, you don't let that turn into overconfidence. So you need to pair that confidence with humility, right? And tying that with Umar was saying, the importance of saying and knowing your place, knowing your limits. When someone asks you a question, you're still confident that I have the truth. They may ask you a shubahat, like a very doubtful topic or question. Remain confident that there is an answer for this, but you simply say, you raise your hand and you say, I don't know. At this moment, I don't know. There is an answer for it. I'm going to go to research it and find it. And it's it's key that you come around to that person. Find that answer for them. You do not want to leave them because you are too shy. So having the confidence that you have the truth, the haqq, and also the humility to be able to know your limits. To say, I don't know the answer at this moment. I will go research it for you, right? So when you have that confidence, it shows, it exudes, Some personal anecdotes. I remember I went to, dinner, I think it was with a couple Christians. They were like, wow, they were amazed that I showed up and it was one of me and a few of them. They were like, we were surprised that you showed up by yourself. I'm like, what do you mean? I have the haqq. Like, what am I scared of, right? I'm confident that I have the truth, right? And through practice and perseverance and learning, right, it's something that comes with time. Wallahi, when I first started to give da'wah, I was shaking to stand at the da'wah table at U of L. Because like, what is someone asking me a question? What do I do? And then just slowly doing it and listening to other folks getting those questions and answering them, it built my confidence up. Not only do I have the confidence to say that I know that I have the haqq, but the confidence to be able to convey that message with humility, right? Respecting the other side, right? Da'wah is not about arguing. It's not about one-ing up the other person. It's not about winning this argument. You are there to deliver the message of Islam, and you want to do that in the most complete way possible, even if it's a silly question. And I'll end with that, inshallah, on the next slide, where I'll give one of the techniques that I've kind of held on to as I've been giving da'wah. Time management, right? We talked about this, being punctual, right? When you are meeting someone and you set a time, the fact that you're running a couple minutes late might be, not a big deal to yourself, but to the person that you're meeting, it puts a huge blemish. Like, he can't trust you anymore. Like, this is what I'm getting myself into. This is what they hold themselves to, especially when we puff out our chest and say, Islam is a complete way of life. It's a system of life. But we're showing up late to the appointment that we made with that person, right? You have friendliness and manners. This, in certain da'wah situations that you're giving, or just generally at the workplace, you will find that the most effective method of giving passive da'wah is you just being a good Muslim. You being a friendly person, a respectful person, a helpful person, right? And not only in the masjid, volunteering in other places. When there's something that people don't understand. They think that someone has to ascribe to be a da'i to be a da'i. They're like, oh, this is what I do. I do da'wah, so I'm a da'i. You have to understand, da'wah is calling, right? In Islam, that means you're calling to Islam, like proactively. But you have to understand, everyone at every moment is always giving da'wah. You're always calling to or away from something. So the way that you carry yourself, even if you're not intending to give da'wah, you are giving da'wah. If you are Muslim, got a big beard, your name is Muhammad, and you're stealing and doing this, right? You're giving da'wah away from Islam, and you don't even know it. So this is really to make sure that you have the right mindset, that I am a da'i at all times. I'm calling to Islam. So I should let my actions show that. I should accept that. And not only do it passively, but actively as well. There's active da'wah and there's passive da'wah. And there are going to be many times, we live in America, right? Majority non-Muslim. You're going to have, colleagues, peers, friends, mates, neighborhood, like people that you hang out with that are going to ultimately ask you a question at some point. So you should at least equip yourself with the right tools to be able to answer some of their questions, but not even that, at least leave a positive impact on the person. Leave a positive impact on the person. So it's really key to be friendly and having good manners with them, even if you don't know them. Smiling, offering to help, right? There are many times we have a da'wah table at the state fair, for example. It's a great opportunity for us because you have many folks that come from other counties that never have met a Muslim. And the only thing that you get is a few seconds of their time, right? So you don't get to sit there and explain to them all about Islam. But having that friendly smile, cracking a joke with them, asking them how their day is, that leaves an impression. Like, you do not want to belittle anything. All of it, if you have the right intention, can be da'wah for the sake of Allah, right? And turning every opportunity that you have into da'wah. Ambition, right? All of us should be ambitious. We always hear, we hear great da'is and great stories of scholars and imams, and we never think we want to be one of them. It's always got to be someone else, right? Inshallah, my kids, or we'll have someone from the community. We look up to them, but we never think that this could be us. But from the sunnah is that we should strive that we want to be one of those, right? We want to be a great scholar. And having that ambition will drive you to improve yourself year over year, right? Connected it to what you were saying, right? That incremental increase. You'll find at the end of it, you are completely changed, completely improved. And again, you want to do this for the sake of Allah. The journey that you are taking, every step that you take is counted as ibadah for you, if you're doing it for the sake of Allah. Enthusiasm and optimism, right? When it comes to situations where you're trying to give da'wah or you're teaching new Muslim, you should come at it from a positive mindset, right? You should be enthusiastic. If you see that you're, for example, the people that you're teaching aren't showing up or they're showing up late, don't be so hard on them to the point that you break them, right? Like, I gave you 3 pieces of homework, you didn't do anything, you're useless. No, you should be enthusiastic that they're still coming, right? Alhamdulillah, we had this gathering. We had to start late, brothers were late, right? We could have packed it up and said, oh, what's going on? Ruined the whole workshop. But instead, we remained enthusiastic. We said, the brothers will come, we'll continue. Those that can benefit will benefit, inshallah. And the last one that I want to touch on is that empathy, right? Empathy, putting yourself in the shoes of the other person. Seeing how do they take in the world? How do they understand the world? Tying into what you were saying, right? When you're trying to deliver a message to someone, if you want them to receive it, you should know what is most likely to help them receive that. Now, if you're just discounting their background, their questions and all of that, right? They ask you a question, and to you it's like, duh, like that's an easy question. But to them it might be a big deal. Taking a step back and understanding why they may have that question, right? And what it may mean to them. It may be a dumb question to you, it may be silly. It may be like, that's not even a doubtful question, but to them it's doubtful. So coming at it with that empathy. We should lead our lives and our da'wah work with that empathy anyway. So obviously if you're teaching new Muslims, right, there are going to be times where you need to give a presentation. Or if you're giving da'wah, we have, sometimes open mosques, days that we have at the community. Sometimes we don't have a speaker coming in, so someone may need to do that. Or in general, if you're hosting folks or teaching, presentation skills are really important. And there are certain things to kind of keep in mind. Number one, the keys to an effective presentation is that preparation. You need to make sure that you spend the time to prepare. Not only prepare and just kind of put funny images and stuff together, but really spend the time to understand what is the storyline that you're trying to convey. How does it all come into play? How does it make sense? How do I give an insightful, engaging presentation? It's not really just to throw on words and really just read off of it or have them read, right? So that's one of the keys, is the preparation. Part of that preparation comes like trial runs. Many times, if you're in corporate jobs, you have to give a presentation to a president or something. You don't want that to be the first time that you do it. Same here, when you're giving da'wah, when you're teaching new Muslims, you have plenty of resources, right? If you're given the task of putting together a presentation, spend the time to prepare, get it ready beforehand, and have a couple trial runs with someone who may be a little bit more experienced or maybe a little bit more knowledgeable to tell you maybe you shouldn't say this or you shouldn't do that, right? This will help. By the time you do it, it's the third or fourth time doing it instead of doing it your first time. It's going to be less shaky, it's going to be concise, it's going to be clear. Again, I mentioned the storyline, right? Making sure that your entire presentation has a story that you have put together, not just random facts here and there. Try to connect everything. The way that I'm now trying to connect all of the workshops together, right? Because when we put together this workshop, the point is it should all be a wholesome workshop. So you should be able to connect the different parts. Not only that, use visuals as you can, appropriate ones, not for the sake of just having them, but to have things that aid in people's understanding, to keep them engaged as well. Keep it very concise, right? You'll see many times if it's someone's first time doing a presentation, or in general, in high school, whatever, we would just put everything on the presentation and just sit there and read off of it. Presentation is supposed to be your main points, your cues on what you're going to talk about. If you put everything on there and you're reading from it, and your audience is reading from it, they're disengaged, right? You want to just put small bullet points, small summaries, definitions, things that you want them to read but you don't necessarily want to talk about, but you want to keep it concise because that makes sure that you're speaking and not just reading off of a presentation. And the last one, this is one that I found helpful from Muhammad that he mentioned time and time again. Try to have a take-home message for the audience, right? How does this impact their lives? How can they use this practically to improve their lives, right? So try to embed that, and we try to do that throughout this workshop, right? Like giving actual scenarios, telling you how this might work in the real world. Going with the presentation skills, communication skills. These are very, very important. Again, I cannot sit here and extensively talk about all the tools that you need for good communication, but this is really to put it on your radar, right? To make sure that you understand this is something that you can work on, to have effective communication skills, right? You want to be engaged with the audience. You want your voice projection. When you want to emphasize something, raise your voice a little bit. You do not want to be monotonous and lose the audience in that way. Communication skills, this is skills that can be developed and learned over time. How? By watching great speakers, right? Listening to their speeches, looking at the little cues that they do, right? If you're talking to an audience, for example, making sure that you're speaking with confidence. You're not just slouching and kind of, in low tone, just whispering almost. No, you want to really have that strong voice because that automatically they want to listen to you. They want to be engaged the whole time. So that voice projection, having tonal changes, I don't know about you guys, but that is something that I cannot live with, a monotonous voice. We've always had like professors that speak in that same tone. You're just like barely there, falling asleep, right? No, have some life in your voice when you're speaking. When there's a time for you to increase the emphasis, you increase your voice as well. Eye contact. We talked about this in one-to-one settings, but also in group settings, right? We have narrations that when the Prophet ﷺ would give a khutbah, for example, the Sahaba would sit there and swear that he was looking at me directly the whole time. So he would scan and look at different person's eyes as he was given the lecture. And this is something that comes with a lot of practice and a lot of experience. When I first started giving khutbahs, it was really hard. You would just get one target and you would lock on, and it's easier to just lock on to that one person. But you want to be mindful of it, that you're scanning, taking a few seconds, looking at different faces, right? So that they feel that you're talking directly to them, and they will accept that message a lot more. And when it comes to questions that you may receive, discussions you may receive, when I put that on there, it was more on a one-to-one basis. So you may have someone come and ask you a question. When they ask you that question and you answer them, you don't want to answer them directly just to that question, and then they'll ask you another random question. You want to be able to guide the discussion. You want to answer the question in a way that makes the conversation as a whole give a more meaningful answer, right? It's very easy to just answer the question directly, and that's it, and then he'll ask another question, and at the end of it, he asked you 15 questions, and he still doesn't know what Islam is, right? So when it comes to those opportunities, when you're giving da'wah, you want to keep a framework in mind in your head that before you answer, whatever the question is, take a step back, let them know, this answer that I'm going to give you may not necessarily make sense unless you understand the framework that we are going to answer this question from. The way that I live my life, right? The way that my belief system is, if you don't understand that, then the answer won't make sense to you. It'll just be a random answer and you'll dismiss it. So keeping that in mind in your discussion. If you're in a classroom setting, for example, and you're teaching the reverts, the new Muslims, the discussions that may get started may sidetrack the whole thing. Keeping that in mind and keeping it in line with the presentation and the topic that you're teaching, again, will make sure that there's effective communication happening. Leadership skills, again, ties all of it in, right? Your presentation skills, your communication skills, your leadership skills, just your ability to manage the class that you're teaching, manage the discussion, manage the conversation. Being a leader is not about position or title. Everyone is a leader in their own right. Being a leader is having influence over the person that you are talking to. So effectively communicating with them and managing your time and managing the discussion and the conversation will ensure that you're managing the entire session and the workshop and the class to be the most effective. Just 2 minutes and then we can do that later, inshallah. I'll just wrap up here very quickly. I mentioned, when it comes to answering questions, right? It's very easy if you're in a one-on-one da'wah situation or even in a classroom setting, when you're asked a question, to just right off the bat answer that specific question and that's it. But if someone is giving da'wah for the sake of Allah and wants to share the message of Islam, you should take every opportunity you have to share a concise message of the Islam, right? The entire message of Islam in a concise way. This is a framework that's helped me a lot because any question that I get, I just take a step back and I try to connect it to this, right? It's called go-rap method. There are many other methods out there, right? Adam's smiling in the back because he knows I'm a huge proponent of go-rap. Because in a conversation that you're having one-on-one, the conversation could go all sorts of different ways. You ask a question, why don't you guys eat pork? Or why don't you eat this? Or why don't you do that? Or why do you do this? What about LGBT? But having this framework in your mind will tell you that I need to steer any discussion, any conversation in this path. Talk about God's existence. Talk about Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. Talk about revelation, the reason why He created us and therefore He sent us the revelation. Talk about angels and talk about the prophethood. In the end of it, if you keep this framework in mind, you'll know that you're not just answering random questions, but you are indeed sharing the message of Islam.